I want to go back to a verse that I shared with you last week in Hebrews chapter 10. It said, hey, take a moment, consider something. In the midst of all this, just consider some things. Consider how we can spur one another on towards love and good deeds. Not giving up meeting together. Well, it's hard because of social distancing, and that's a new phrase. I don't even like that phrase. I think the better phrase is physical distancing, where we don't have to get together physically, but socially we need to connect with one another, as some are in the habit of doing. But do this, encourage each other, and all the more as you see like the day approaching. Let me kind of ask you to do two things for me this week before I get into the message. I want you to encourage one another, everybody. Please take a moment, pick up your phone, call someone, FaceTime, check on the elderly, check on your neighbors. Just make sure that this week you're not just looking in, taking care of yourself only. And you say, well, am I my brother's keeper? Come on, if you're going to quote anybody in the Bible, don't quote Cain. He's not a good person to quote. Yeah, we are our brother's keeper. I mean, just make sure they're doing okay. Our small groups, even though we can't gather during this time of social distancing, I'm going to ask you to text each other, call each other. What I'm doing with my group is Zoom, and we're just sort of getting together in the morning and just talking through some things, and just been encouragement to me, and hopefully you can encourage someone. Second thing I want you to do is serve each other. And we're going to keep doing this, as I mentioned earlier, more than ever, you guys, you want to see a real calamity, shut the church down. We are the salt. You know what's keeping this world alive right now is the church. We are the salt of the earth. We're a preserving agent, and we're the light of the world. We're dispelling darkness. And so we're going to serve each other. This week, we're giving more than ever, impacting more than ever. But two things that are going on top of all the things I mentioned is for Seminole County Public Schools, we've got with them, connected with them. We're going to be a drop-off site Monday through Friday from 10 to 3. And they're going to anyone throughout the community can drop off school supplies, and we're going to make sure those get delivered to all the schools and all the students in need. Also, East Coast family, this is just for you. Hey, we're filling up food pantries, and I tell you, like truckloads are going out daily. If you want to be a part of that, you can either give on the app at COVID-19 Outreach, or even better is go purchase some food, drop it off at the church. It's drive-through drop-off Monday through Friday, 10 to 3. We'll have some team out there. You just hand it to them through your car. You don't have to get out, talk to anybody, and they'll take it, and we'll deliver those on your behalf. Hey, let me get into what I want to share with you today. I want to talk to you about perspective. I want to talk to you about having a God perspective of really what's going on. I need to remind you of something, that God is not surprised by the coronavirus. The Bible is full of situations where people went through tough times, difficult times, and God was never surprised. In fact, let me bring this home to you. I think what's going on is this. The other night I was putting my son to bed, my youngest, and as I was praying with him and saying goodnight to him, he said, Daddy, I got to ask you a question. And I said, what, son? He said, I need to know, are we ever going to go back to school or not? And so what most kids would be like, praise the Lord. The glory of the Lord has shone upon the earth, that school has been canceled. But I could tell there was another reason he was asking. He said, Dad, are we ever going to go back to school? And I knew it was more than him missing his friends. I knew it was more than him getting out of his routine. I knew it was more than him just like, hey, things are different. What I knew he was asking, I could tell by his voice, Dad, is everything going to be okay? I need to know, is this the new norm? This COVID-19, the coronavirus, and all the distancing, schools shut down, restaurants shut down, everything. Is this the new norm for us? And I looked him right in the eyes and I said, Caleb, son, I need you to know something. Everything is going to be okay. And he said, okay, Daddy, good night, and went back to sleep. And I want to look you in the eye, and I want to tell you guys, everything is going to be okay. God is not surprised by the coronavirus. He's not surprised by COVID-19. What I want to deal with you today and talk to you about is perspective. In fact, if you're looking for a title, if you're a note taker, I'm talking about perspective, promise, and position. I want to talk about having a different perspective, because I have a different perspective about this than maybe some of you do. In fact, the Bible says in Psalms 37, Psalmist David said, I was young and now I'm old. Like, hey, I have he said, I have perspective as an older person that a younger person might not have. Yet I have never seen the righteous forsaken or their seed begging for bread. What he's saying is, hey, don't forget, you have to keep perspective in the midst of this. If you lose your perspective, then you're going to get in fear. If you lose your perspective, you're going to freak out. Don't lose your perspective. The Apostle Paul did the same thing in 1 Thessalonians chapter 4 and verse 13. Now let me set this up for you. Let me give you some context. He's talking about death. He's talking about when someone dies and when they leave planet Earth and when you depart. And this is what he said, and now, dear brothers and sisters, we want you to know something. I want you to know something. What will happen to the believers who have died, so you will not grieve like people who have no hope. Now he's talking about death. But I want to take this a little bit, I want to spin it, and I want to talk about the coronavirus. And now, dear brothers and sisters, I want you to know something. I want you to know what's going on. And I don't want you to grieve. Now listen, like people who have no hope, it's not wrong to grieve. The reality of it is the economy turned upside down? Yes. Are the schools closed? Yes. Are there people out there that are vulnerable? Yes. Without question. The Bible says be pragmatic. Make sure that you're taking advice of your physician and doctors and scientists. But here today, guys, I'm not coming to you as an economist. I'm not coming to you as a politician. I'm not coming to you as a doctor today from the medical profession. I'm coming to you as a pastor. And as a pastor, what I'm telling you is this, that we have to have a different perspective than the world. We grieve, yeah, we realize what's going on. We're pragmatic, we understand, but we don't do it like people who have no hope. We have a different perspective than everybody else. Our perspective is going to be this. God is somewhere in the middle of this. And here it is. For we believe, verse 14. We believe something. And I know you're here, you're saying, well, come on, man. Pastor, do you know what's going on out there? I want to believe. Like, I don't know. I really want to believe. And I feel like I should believe, but then I watch the news, and I'm not telling you to put your head in the sand and to ignore the news. I'm not saying that at all. In fact, I'm telling you to be informed. But we believe something. For we believe, and I know you're sitting here going, well, I believe too, but sometimes I get nervous and I get worried. Okay, it's okay. See, to be concerned is about the reality of today. To be worried, the Bible says don't do that. That's about the uncertainty of tomorrow. So you can be concerned about today and not worry about tomorrow. And he says, for we believe, to which you would say, and I think you would connect with this character in the book of Mark. He's talking to Jesus, and Jesus said, man, if you can just believe, Mark 9:23, all things are possible to him that believeth. And in verse 24, the Father instantly cried out, and I think that's where a lot of us are. I do believe, Lord, but come on, help me. Help me overcome my unbelief. And I think that's where a lot of us are today. We do believe. We want to believe. We don't want to worry. We don't want to fear. But we don't want to grieve. Here's what I'm going to do for you. I'm going to help you say, okay, it's real. This stuff is not made up. It's not a figment of our imagination. COVID-19 is a real deal. Unemployment's a real deal. The economy is a real deal. The hospitals are being overwhelmed. It's a real deal. But help me overcome my unbelief. I want to do this, and I want to take you to one verse. One verse that I think is going to help us walk through this moment. One verse that's going to help us navigate the times that we're living in. This one verse, I believe, it's a go-to verse for me in the Bible. And if I can be honest with you, my devotion time since this came about 3 weeks ago, I've only been in 2 books of the Bible. And I've been spending all my time in 2 books, in the book of Psalm and also in the book of Isaiah. And there's a verse, and if you ever study Isaiah, and I don't have time to unpack this, it's broken really into 2 sections. The book of Isaiah, it's 66 chapters. Isaiah 1 through 40 is warnings from God, warning the children of Israel to live a certain way, do a certain way, and if you don't, and anyways, in chapter 40, they're taken away into captivity in Babylon. And then Isaiah chapter 41, it all of a sudden switches, and God says, okay, you find yourself in a spot that you don't want to be in. You find yourself in an uncomfortable spot. You find yourself in a position, in a situation that you don't like. And the truth of the matter is you wish you could just pray it away, but you're praying and it's not going away. And then God makes this incredible promise in Isaiah chapter 41 and in verse 10. And this is the verse that we're just going to focus on today. He said, hey, don't be afraid. Don't fear, for I am with you. He's going to make 4 promises to help you get through and help you navigate difficult times. You see, I think a lot of us read the Bible and we think that the Bible is full of men and women who had no problems. And can I tell you something? The Bible is not full of men and women who've had no problems. Can I tell you this? To find men and women who had no problems, you'd have to get rid of 2/3 of the Bible. 2/3 of the Bible are full of men and women's stories who had problems, but they walked through their problems with God. They chose to do this with God, not without God. And Isaiah said, don't be afraid, for God's saying, I am with you. Number 2, don't be discouraged, for I am your God. Number 3, I will strengthen you and I will help you. Number 4, I will hold you up with my victorious right hand. We're going to unpack these 4 promises in 15 minutes. Number 1, he said this, don't be afraid. To which you would say, well, don't you know what's going on, Norm? Don't you see what's happening out there? To which I would say, yeah, don't be afraid. Why? Because I am with you. I'm reminding you that God is with you. See, I have a different perspective. Fear is running rampant out there today. Fear is, if you watch the news or the media or watch television or get on an app, Facebook, social media, Twitter, whatever, fear is running rampant. And my perspective might be a little different than your perspective. Is because I'm not afraid. I realize what's going on, but I want to remind you of something. God is with you. Don't try to do coronavirus without God. But if you do it with God, you're going to be okay. See, let me remind you of something. Let me take you back through some history since I've been in high school. In 1984, I was a senior in high school. In 1984, there's a new epidemic that swept through the earth, and it was called the AIDS epidemic, and it was brand new. The AIDS epidemic was new to us, and I know we have history now, but some 35 years ago, we didn't have that history. And so everyone was scared. They didn't know. Do you drink after this person? Can you catch AIDS by drinking after someone? What if you sit on a subway next to someone who has AIDS? Will you catch AIDS? There was no known cure. And in fact, on top of all that, to make matters worse, there was even some in the church that were assigning this as judgment, which is contrary to the Bible. And so at the time, the AIDS epidemic, it was running rampant, and people were fearful and people were afraid. But can I tell you something? In the middle of the AIDS epidemic, that God was with us then. And here we are 35 years later, and we made it through. And then in 1999, you all remember 1999, the Y2K came about. And what happened was this, as they said at the year January 1st of 2000, that all the computers were going to crash. What they said was this, is that at 2000, that they didn't think we'd live that long. And so the year 2000, what they said was this, we were going to go back, our society was going to go back to the Stone Age. What they said in the year 2000 was this, all the medical equipment that was computerized was going to shut off. All the ventilators, all the heart machines, all the pacemakers in people's heart, they were all going to shut off instantly. Banking was going to be destroyed. And talk about hoarding groceries. This isn't the first time, everybody, that people have hoarded groceries. 1999 in December, people were hoarding groceries back then. My God, how much toilet paper do you people need? You know what I'm talking about? I think here's what we could do, everybody. For Easter, we could give 1 roll of toilet paper to every family that walks to the church. We wouldn't have enough parking for everybody in our community. But they said it was all going to shut down. But can I tell you something? The clock struck midnight and nothing shut down. Can I remind you of this? That God was with us in the AIDS epidemic, and God was with us at the Y2K. And then in 9/11, 2001, September 11th, this is history for some of you young people, but for some of us, we lived through this, we walked through this. And do you remember what happened during that time? Those planes crashed into those buildings in New York City, into the Pentagon, and the one crashed, and all airlines were shut down. No more travel. Remember, they said you can't even drink water from the water supply. They were afraid it was going to be poisoned. I mean, before Amazon ever was, You didn't want to open your mail because they were talking about, spreading anthrax and viruses and chemicals through the mail. Can I tell you that God was with us during the AIDS epidemic? Can I tell you God was with us at Y2K? And can I tell you he was with our nation during 9/11? It wasn't fun, it wasn't pleasant. In 2008, something happened and it really affected probably Florida and California and certain areas of the country more than others. But we had the 2008 recession, the economic crisis hit. It was a credit crisis. And I saw in our church, at East Coast Believers, I saw men and women who I have known. We were a brand new church that we just started, and we were just a baby church. And we quit counting at 41 families who had to leave and move from Orlando because their homes' value depleted. They were unemployed. And they backed up to a U-Haul to the back of their home and just loaded it up and left the keys on the front door. 41 families, we quit counting. You couldn't borrow money. People's lost values in their homes. Can I tell you something? I have a different perspective than maybe someone who hasn't walked through that before. That God was with us. He was with us in the AIDS epidemic. He's with us at Y2K. He was with us during 9/11. He's with us to the 2008 credit crash. Can I tell you what I'm thinking about this 2020 COVID-19? That I don't have to be afraid. You know why? God is with us, everybody. And because God is with us, we're going to be okay. All I'm asking you is, don't try to navigate this without God. This is not a season of our life where we need less of God. This is a season of our life where we need more of God. Another promise, he said this, don't be discouraged, for I am your God. Isn't it true? We live in a world where it just seems like at every angle and at every newscast, every report, it's just discouragement after discouragement after discouragement. Can we just admit we live in a negative world? We live in a world where actually people make money if they peddle discouragement. And here's what God's saying, don't be discouraged. Why? Because I am your God. What's he saying, everybody, is this, that he's still the great physician. He's still the Lord thy God that changes not. He's still never going to leave us or forsake us. Come on, everybody. He's still the great provider. He's not just a God, he's the God. And he happens to be your God. And so, man, I get it. My perspective's different than the world's. I would be afraid. I would be discouraged if I tried to do this without God. But if I include God in it, I don't have to be discouraged. You know why? Because the creator of heaven and the earth, he's my God. Here's another promise in there. He said, I will strengthen you and help you. Number 3 said, I will give you strength. This is a time where we just need strength. Can I just remind you, don't try to do this thing without the strengthening hand of God in your life. Don't try to walk through this season of life without God's strength and without God's hand, everybody. If you try, it's going to be difficult. If you try to do this without God's strength, I'm telling you, I get it. It's hard. Yes, things are out of control. Yes, we don't see an end in sight. I get all that. But if you try to do it alone, it's going to overwhelm you. But if you would say, God, you're going to be with me, I'm going to do it with your help. And I don't know what it is about men in particular, but we try to resist help. We don't want help. I know a few months ago we had a recliner in our living room, and we had it actually there for my dad because he liked to kick back and put his feet up like that, and none of our furniture had that. And so my dad wasn't visiting us anymore, and so Dina said to me, I want to get rid of that recliner. And I said, okay, and so I said, I'm going to take it out and get rid of it. And so she said, well, you need some help. And I says, no, I don't need any help. And then she said these words that every man, when they hear these words, the stubbornness of God comes out of them. She says, you can't do that by yourself. I said, watch me do this by myself. So I picked up this recliner And I was struggling. And I lifted it up and I got it. And I'm sitting there, I'm struggling so bad. I said, see, I got it. She goes, now walk down that hallway and don't scratch the wall. And I says, honey, I got this. She says, Norm, let me just get you some help. It'll be so easy. I said, I got it. So I lifted up, I'm struggling, and I walk down the hallway, and all of a sudden you hear that sound that you never want to hear. And it was one of the legs scratching across the wall, dipping into the wall and ripping the paint away and making a divot into the drywall. She goes, see, I told you need some help. And I put it down, and my son was there, and I said, hey, can you help me? And can I just tell you this? What I tried to do by myself was near impossible, and it about killed me. That's a little bit of exaggeration, but nonetheless, it preaches good that way. But he just came over and grabbed one end, I grabbed the other end, and we walked it right down the hallway without any effort whatsoever. What God is saying to you, if you will allow me, I will give you strength. You don't have to do this on your own. You don't have to figure it out all on your own. He wants to give you strength. Let me wrap it up with this, and I'm going to ask you if you would, if you're at home, be thinking about like getting your communion elements out. And all during this coronavirus, we're going to take communion every week as a church. And so get your communion elements out if you would. Get ready for that. The fourth thing is God said this, I will hold you up with my victorious right hand. He said, I want to hold you up. And here it is. You got to grab on to the hand of God. This is a time more than ever just to grab the hand of God. And if you've never, so I don't even know how to do that. I'm not even sure how to grab his hand. What I can tell you for certain is this, that God's hand is out there. He doesn't want you to do this on your own. Yes. Here's my perspective. I've been through difficult times. Our nation has been through difficult times. The coronavirus didn't shock God one bit. He's not sitting there going, uh-oh, what are we going to do? And in fact, I will tell you this. What the enemy meant for harm, God's going to turn it out for good. What the enemy meant to destroy and hurt, he figures this out. He flips it around and makes it amazing. And I'm asking you to grab God's hand. And it's just a moment of surrender when you say, God, I need you. God, I can't do this on my own. What I'm asking you to do is this is a season where you don't pull back from God. This is a season where actually you press in to more of God. I'm just telling you, I know whose hand to grab. Here's what he said. Perspective. I am with you. My perspective is different than anyone else's perspective that's doing this without God. I know I'm going to be okay. I'm like David. I was young and now I'm old, and I know I'm going to be okay. Perspective, I am with you. Promise, I will give you strength. And here's our position. I will do this with God holding me. So what do we do with all this, everybody? What do we do with these four promises? I will hold you up. Here's what I'm asking you to do as we wrap it up today. I'm asking you to get the closer you can with God. Because the closer I am with God, the less fear that I'm going to have. The farther away I am from God, the more fear that I'm going to have. I'm asking you, don't lose sight of God in all of this. In the midst, again, be pragmatic, be informed. Let's follow the suggestions of our medical leaders, and let's follow the suggestions of the government, and let's obey all they asked us to do. But don't do this without God. See, the closer I am with God, the less fear that I'm going to have. The further I am away from God, the more fear that I'm going to have. All I'm asking you to do is throughout the day, include God. All I'm asking you to do is when you're watching the news, then flip over and do this. After you watch the news, say, okay, God, this is what they're saying. Your word says, if you make the Lord, see, that's our choice. The closer you get to God, if you make him your refuge, if you make the Most High your shelter, He's not just high, everybody. He's the Most High. He's not just a God, he's the God. He's not just high up there somewhere, he's the highest. He's not just a authority, he's the authority. Jesus is not just a name, it's the name above every name. He's the Most High, your shelter. Here's the promise. Evil won't conquer you. No plague. You could almost just put in there, no coronavirus will come near your home. For he will order his angels to protect you wherever you go.